Well, good morning. It's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I'm here myself today. We've got some of our normal people that are traveling. As you know, it's the holiday times and one of the busiest holiday travel days today, as I'm sure some of you that will see this broadcast are in the middle of it or experiencing it. So, what we want to do is just a few little things here. We want to give you some news, recaps. Recaps we're going to go today. We're going to put them up on all of our pages. What we did at BizCon. It's a great experience out there in Vegas. We met a lot of people. We did a lot of things that we're excited to be doing soon. We're going to bring some of those people out there onto the show so that you can learn more about the things that they do, besides the little snippets that we did, which always go back and check out the snippets here on the foundation page on Facebook, on Twitter, and also on our YouTube channel. So if you missed any of those live broadcasts, the little snippets we did, you can always go back and check. So let's get into the news real quick. President Biden signs a Research Expansion Act. He signed a bipartisan legislation this past week to advance the research into cannabis, according to multiple media reports. The bill, which was known as the Medical Marijuana and Cannabidiol Research Expansion Act, it was approved unanimously in the U.S. Senate, passed by the House of Representatives during this past summer. Biden signed it to advance the research into the cannabis bill so that we can get moving forward on more research and hopefully change the legislation. He says that he is signing it designed to ease scientific research into cannabis. And as we know, that research could go many different ways. We've already seen hempcrete. We've seen feed for animals. We've seen prosthetic limbs. A lot of things that could be done. It's not just what we've seen so far. What could go with cannabis from going forward is just going to be immersive. We don't even know what could be done with it at this point, honestly. It's a significant milestone in the policy reform, the first time a standalone cannabis measure has been approved by the U.S. Congress. The bill requires the U.S. Attorney General's office to make a timely action on the application to conduct the research with cannabis that has been submitted to the agency for approval. The president's intention to sign the legislation was first revealed and later confirmed by a White House spokesman. So Bloomberg first revealed it, but we've actually had a White House spokesman say yes. Yes, he will sign, said the spokesman, and they told the Marijuana Moment in an email. So that's moving forward, which is fantastic. Second of all, on our news today, New York and the cannabis industry. This is very interesting if you haven't been following it. They've issued 36 cannabis dispensary licenses on Monday. It's taken a monumental step in establishing legal and lucrative market for recreational use. The license approved by the state's Cannabis Control Board were the first of 175 the state plans to issue. So they've done 36. They're planning on doing 175 total. 8 nonprofit groups were among the 36 licenses that have been granted. Some of the dispensaries selected from a pool of more than 900 applicants. They're expected to open by the end of the year. So they're only a few weeks actually, away from that. So they're moving forward with it, which is fantastic news. New York has also planned a $200 million public/private fund to aid social equity. Applicants to help redress the ravages of the war of drug, especially in communities of color, which we've discussed multiple times, how this affects people of color, how this affects them in terms of equality. Now, there's more to this as well. It's very important. When the first license is now issued, it remains to see whether officials would step up their efforts to go after scores of unauthorized dispensaries open in the past year. So we're not sure if they're going to go after them legally, if they're going to find a way to help subsidize and make them have licenses so they can become legal. That's all stuff we'll have to wait and see. Individuals granted licenses had to have a track record of operating small businesses, as well as, and here's the interesting part, a prior marijuana pot conviction. So think about that for a minute. You had to have a prior conviction to be able to get this license, as well as show that you know how to run a small business. Licenses were granted to entities such as Noob NYC LLC, owned by a group including Hector Guerrero, who owned a courier and packaging supply business. Another license went to Suzanne Ferbater, sorry if I said that name wrong, last name wrong, and Fernando Pena, who owned and operated a gastro pub and wine bar in New York. Reginald Fluen went on to state, "We are a little concerned about whether the license holders are being set up for failure." So we've discussed that too. That's where knowing how to do this, have your research, make sure you're set up legally, understand how all the different business aspects affect taxing and whatnot in your area, what can be done, what can't, so that you're lined up and ready to go from the beginning. But he brings up a fair point. If the state is not going to help continue to support it, it could be a failed venture. So that is very important. And we hope that they do move forward and make it to where it's beneficial for everybody. Just as concerning, Fluen said, was whether the new legal recreational dispensaries were able to compete with the existing medical marijuana outlets, if allowed to enter the recreational market at the same time as the new licenses. So, like we stated earlier, if you already have a dispensary and it's not authorized, not legal, so to say, are they going to allow them to get the proper licensing? Because let's be honest, they already know what they're doing. They're already established, they're already set up. To me, that would make sense to do that, to make sure that what is operating can continue to operate. But we'll have to wait and see if that's what happens. However, according to the draft regulations released on Sunday, medical outlets may have to wait another 3 years before they can enter the recreational market. Now, on to Oregon. Oregon governor pardons. Oregon Governor Kate Brown announced Monday that she's issuing pardons for Oregons who have been convicted of simple possession of marijuana. Now, remember, simple is less than 3. That's the same thing that Biden was talking about in his pardons. The pardon for people convicted of possessing 1 ounce or less of marijuana before 2016 when they were 21 years or older. Brown's pardon applies in cases where possession was the only charge and there was no victims. So remember that. You have to have only the marijuana conviction, as they're stating here, 1 ounce or less. You have to be over 21. You can't have another conviction, whether it be cocaine, opiates, drinking and driving, any of these other charges as well. And no victims. So nobody robbed, nobody hurt and injured. Those are the guidelines for those. The pardons will remove 47,000 convictions for possession of 1 ounce or less of marijuana. They're stating that it will impact approximately 45,000 people. The move will also forgive more than 14 million in fines and fees associated with their offenses. In a statement, Brown said, "No one deserves to be forever saddled with the impacts of a conviction for simple marijuana, a crime that is no longer on the books in Oregon." So that's one thing that we had brought up, that a conviction of this manner will continue to affect you, business, living, rental agreements, possibly even banking. So these are the things that she's trying to fix. She goes on to state that Oregons should never face housing insecurity, employment barriers, and educational obstacles as a result of doing something that now is legal. And it has been for years. The pardon will remove these hardships. While Oregons use marijuana at similar rates, Blacks and Latinos have been arrested, prosecuted, and convicted at unproportional rates comparative. And that's what we stated before. People of color a lot of times have had the higher rate of prosecution, higher rate of incarcerations, higher rates than those of whites, and we've mentioned that throughout the whole nation. According to the governor's office, the pardon applies only to state-level convictions because the statewide judicial database used by the Oregon Judicial Department doesn't have access to locally operated city and county municipalities or justice court records. In addition, President Biden's recent pardon of simple possession of marijuana convictions doesn't overlap with any conviction pardoned by Brown, because Biden's pardon only federal level possession of marijuana convictions. Brown's applies to the state level. Brown's pardon also won't result in anyone being freed from incarceration, according to the office. We also heard that with Biden. These simple possessions, people are not in federal jail for simple. There are other convictions, there are other charges. So even though that simple might be removed, they're not being released. And that's what Brown's stating as well. Pardoning simple possession in Oregon is absolutely necessary to repair the damage done by the failed war on drugs. Whedon says in the statement, it is the proper use of the governor's clemency powers, and I hope that every governor and state legislator will follow suit. The American people have consistently shown overwhelming support for expungement and reform of the marijuana laws. It's time for Congress to step up and to begin to right these wrongs at the federal level. We approach the end of Congress. He states, I will continue to push for meaningful cannabis reform and will fight to get as much done as possible. And I think that's very important what he says there, meaningful cannabis reform, because we've seen reform, but minimal, incremental, as we've stated before. So even though we're getting some reform, is it really going to help us? Is it going to push the movement forward? That's the question mark. And I think that's what he's stating in terms of meaningful. Now we have one more article we're going to get to you. I know today's broadcast could be a little bit shorter, but we had some news that felt that I want to get out there. And as I stated, we're going to still be sharing some clips from MJ BizCon, and we'll have those here and on our other sites as well. You can always go back and revisit any of our broadcasts at any time. So we hope that you share the word, get other people, help this platform grow, because we want to see this movement changed in the nation. We also want to help educate people as to how they can help, what to watch for, and to make sure that even though a state has made it legal, that you are still also doing things properly and legally so that you don't get in trouble for these things. Now, Missouri, that's where we're going to end up with. Webster talks marijuana tax in Missouri, and I think this is rather important. The recent passage of Amendment 3 legalized recreational marijuana in Missouri could be gateway to additional revenue for Webster Groves. City officials are researching municipalities' ability to pass an additional tax. So that's an added on tax to what's already there, an additional tax on marijuana sales. While the city does not currently have any dispensaries, so keep that in mind, they don't have the dispensaries set up yet, but they're trying to talk about the tax ahead of time. City Manager Marie Peoples told council members during a working session on Tuesday that putting a sales tax on the ballot as early as next April would position the city for additional revenue streams when the time comes. To me, I think that's very important that you're going ahead and setting up how the tax is going to be set up so that they're not going to allow it to become used for recreational, have the dispensaries, medicinal, whatever it might be, then go back and do a tax. So somebody could open a dispensary and think they're, 7, 8, 9% tax. Then once they spent all this money to open it, the city, the state might come back and go, it's a 25% tax. So I like how they're doing this. They're setting up the tax ahead of time so that you know going in what it's supposed to be. Missouri voters on November 8th approved the legislation of marijuana use by adults 21 and older, passing the measure with a 53.1% of the vote. Under the amendment, Missouri would collect a 6% sales tax. So I like how they're setting that up because, like we said, they're looking at 6%, which is key because these people are going to set up their dispensaries, their stores, and know what it is ahead of time, which is very, very important, as we all know. Now, if I can find this real quick, I'm going to go back and try to give you one more little thing here. And it had to do with MJ BizCon. Sorry, I'm going to see if I can find that article for you. But while I'm doing that, everything that was at MJ is actually huge. I mean, there's so much there, from legal to banking to extractions and everything else. We're going to get these people on with us. We're going to dedicate a lot of time having people explain to you different facets of this industry, what they can do to help you. Things that, to be honest, until I went to BizCon, I honestly didn't even really know existed in this business, because there is so much. We spent 3 days out there, and to be honest, we didn't even touch everything that we would have liked to have, because that's how big this business is, how big this convention is, everything that's involved. And unfortunately, sorry, I am not seeing that article. So that might be something I'll have to do for you next time. But one thing we definitely want to do is wish everybody a safe travel, wonderful time with your family for Thanksgiving. And one thing I want to reach out to and mention, as we've done before on the mental end, holidays can be a tough time for people. Not everybody gets to spend time with their friends or families due to various reasons. So enjoy that time with your families, but I encourage everybody to reach out to others, check on them, see how they're doing. If you know someone who is unable to spend time with their friends or family, if you don't invite them, see if you can at least maybe bring them some food or check on them, because this can be a very, very tough time for many people. I've dealt with it myself as well. So with that, I wish everybody a wonderful Thanksgiving, safe travels, enjoy the time with your friends and family. And like I said, we'll be posting stories daily as we normally do. Also be posting other things on here. And we look forward to seeing you all next Wednesday. And we'll dive into this even further. Thank you, and hope you all have a blessed week.